Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the deep dive.
Mm-hmm.
I actually want to start today by asking you to picture a really specific scenario.
Okay.
Imagine you're in this high-stakes meeting, or uh, maybe a really tense family dinner. Voices are getting loud, people are talking over each other, and you can physically feel the tension in the room rising.
Oh, yeah. We have definitely all been there.
Right. It feels like something is just about to snap.
It's that exact moment right before the chaos breaks loose, your stomach ties in a knot, and you're just kind of waiting for the explosion.
Exactly. But then someone walks in,
What?
or maybe they've been there the whole time, just sitting quietly in the corner, and they don't slam their fist on the table. They don't shout for everyone to be quiet.
But subtly, almost invisibly.
The temperature in the room drops 10 degrees. The anxiety dissipates. You just feel safe.
It's like a human pressure valve just released all the steam.
Right. And for a really long time, I just thought these people were, just nice or really chill. But today, we're learning that there is actually a complex, high-performance engine running underneath that calmness.
Which is fascinating.
It is. We're doing a deep dive into the ASSU, which is also known as the Compassionate Connector.
And I love this profile because it completely challenges our modern definition of strength. We usually think strength is loud, right? We think it's the person commanding the room. But the ASU proves that the strongest force is often the one holding everything together.
Now, we are basing this entire deep dive on the Max Energy ME80 personality system. So for you listeners who might be used to, say, Myers-Briggs or the Enneagram, can you set the stage for us? What makes the ME80 approach so different?
Yeah, that is a really crucial distinction to make right up front. Most traditional tests look at the what. Like, what do you do? Do you like parties? Do you make lists? Do you cry at movies?
Right, behavioral stuff.
Exactly. But the ME80 system is interested in the why and the how. It actually looks at your energy architecture.
Energy architecture. I mean, that sounds super technical.
It is, but think of it like a computer. Your behavior is the software running on the screen. That's what we all see. The ME80 analyzes the hardware, the processor speed, the cooling system, the battery life.
Okay, I have that analogy.
It basically maps out how a person processes information, how they handle emotional weight, and where their energy naturally flows.
So with the ASSU, we aren't just asking if they're friendly. We're asking how their motherboard is wired to process human emotion.
Precisely. We are looking at the flow of energy. Does it push out? Does it pull in? How does it handle a heavy load? And for the ASU, that wiring is incredibly specific.
Let's get into that wiring then. The source material gives us this hero section for this profile. It's sort of a core declaration or mission statement.
Yeah.
It defines the ASU's core identity with this really beautiful phrase: gently holding people together, helping everyone feel seen and cherished.
It sounds so soft, doesn't it? Cherished.
It does.
But mechanically, this is a heavy-duty function. The ASU is defined as a relational personality. Their entire operating system is centered on emotional connection and supportive responsiveness. They aren't the ones initiating the conflict.
They're responding to it.
Exactly. They're responding to the energy in the room to stabilize it.
The report mentions they have an acute sensitivity to emotional shifts and the relational temperature. Is this just empathy, or is it something more technical?
I would call it empathy womanized for stability. They are monitoring that relational temperature constantly. You know how the thermostat works?
Sure, it just sits there until it gets too hot or too cold.
Right. It doesn't do anything until the temperature deviates from the set point. The ASU is constantly scanning. If the trust level drops or if anxiety spikes, their systems automatically kick in to regulate everything back to safety.
So their role isn't necessarily to be the CEO leading the charge up the hill.
Not usually, no. Their role is to ensure the team actually survives the climb. They are the ones who ground others through deep listening and these really nuanced responses. If the leader is the gas pedal.
The ASU is the suspension system, ensuring the car doesn't shake apart at high speeds.
I love that, yes.
But every engine needs fuel. What drives them? Like, if I'm an ASU, what actually makes me wake up in the morning?
The source material is really clear on this control mechanism. Their inner drive naturally ignites when they feel needed and trusted.
So they have to have a function within the group.
Yes. If they're in a vacuum where everyone is totally independent and cold, they wither. Their control philosophy, and everyone has a way they try to control their environment, is about investing sustained effort to bring people closer.
It's not about manipulating people.
No, not at all. They want to restore connection. Their ultimate goal is getting everyone back into a zone of safety and resilience.
Okay, I want to pivot to the technical side now, because this is where the ME80 system really shines. It talks about the energy matrix. When we pop the hood on a compassionate connector, what are the actual mechanics?
You're looking at an engine built for absorption. The report describes their processing style as inward converging.
Inward converging. That sounds a little sci-fi. Can you unpack that?
Sure. Imagine a personality that is outward diverging. That person walks into a room and projects energy. They talk loud, they gesture, they push their will onto the environment. They're like a spotlight.
Okay, I know a few of those.
We all do. But the ASSU is the exact inverse. They act as an emotional pillar. They let the energy of the room flow into them. They absorb the stress, the excitement, the fear. They take it all in, stabilize it, and ground it.
That sounds incredibly heavy, to just take it all in.
It is. And that's exactly why their baseline energy structure is built with an extremely strong emotional absorption capacity. They're literally designed to carry a weight that would crush other personality types.
Wow. The ME80 system breaks this down into 3 specific layers: IP, IQ, and EQ. And I want to go through these one by one because the definitions in the report are really unique. Let's start with the IP layer.
The inner value layer.
Right. The report calls this direction sensing activation. What does direction sensing actually mean in this context?
Think of the IP layer as their internal compass or a navigation system. Where the ASSU, direction sensing means they have this predictive capability for relationships. They don't just feel what is happening right now.
They sense the trajectory.
Precisely. It's like a highly sophisticated weather radar. They can look at a team or a couple and say, you know, if we keep on this path, there's going to be a massive storm in 3 days. They sense the drift away from safety way before anyone else even notices the wind has changed.
That seems like an amazing superpower. But I imagine it's also incredibly frustrating if no one listens to you until the storm actually hits.
It often is. They are the early warning system that people ignore until the roof is leaking.
Okay, next is the IQ layer. This is the emotional activation layer. The definition here is experience and verification judgment. Now, usually when we hear IQ, we think logic, math, cold, hard facts. But this is linked to experience.
In the ME80 system, this layer is how they validate reality. The ASSU doesn't just react on impulse. They run every emotion they feel against a massive internal database of past experiences. They are verifying, is this feeling real? Have we been here before? Is this person actually safe?
So it's a built-in check and balance system.
Exactly. It stops them from being completely swept away by the emotions they're absorbing. They are constantly cross-referencing the current emotional data with historical data to verify the truth of the situation.
That makes a lot of sense. It grounds their empathy in reality so they aren't just reacting to every single whim.
Right.
And finally, we have the heavy hitter, the EQ layer, the decision calculation layer. The report defines this as emotional carrying capacity and stability.
This is the structural steel of the whole building. Carrying capacity is literally an engineering term. It's how much load a bridge can take before it buckles.
And the ASSU has a massive capacity here.
Huge. When they make decisions, the calculation isn't what makes the most money or what is the fastest route.
Right.
What is it then? The calculation is, how do I maintain stability for the group? They are the ones who stay standing when everyone else has just crumbled under the pressure. They make decisions based on preserving the emotional integrity of the collective.
So when you combine those 3, the radar of the IP, the database of the IQ, and the load-bearing wall of the EQ, you get to the manifestation layer. This is what we actually see them doing in the real world.
Right. And the report uses 3 very specific actions for their manifestation: carrying, absorbing, integrating.
Integrating is a really interesting word there. Carrying and absorbing, that's the sponge part. But integrating.
That's the magic. They don't just hold the mess. They try to integrate it back into a functioning whole. They are trying to fit the broken pieces back together.
So they aren't just a trash can for bad feelings.
No, not at all. Think about that spotlight personality we talked about earlier. They change the room by shining a light on it. The ASSU changes the room by acting like a reservoir. They let the turbulent water flow in, they hold it until the silt settles, and then they release it as calm water.
This leads perfectly into a deep analysis of their inner characteristics. The report highlights something called emotional presence. It says they believe in the power of presence over communication technique.
Yes.
Which kind of feels like a direct shot at all those How to Win Friends and Influence People books.
It kind of is. I mean, we live in a world obsessed with hacks. What's the magic phrase to de-escalate an angry client? What's the 5-step script to fix my marriage?
Right.
The compassionate connector knows that sometimes Words just get in the way.
So they aren't the ones offering generic advice, like, oh, have you tried yoga, or just look on the bright side.
Never. That feels incredibly cheap to them. They listen first. They receive first. The report notes that they create a safe space through subtle cues-eye contact, body language, refined responses.
They allow trust to return in silence rather than through forced dialogue.
Exactly. They know that if they just sit with you in the mess without trying to fix it immediately, the mess often settles itself.
But, and here's the part of the deep dive where we have to be critical. No engine is perfect. If you run a machine that is literally designed to absorb shock and heat constantly, eventually it's going to overheat. What is the shadow blind spot for the ASSU?
The blind spot is blurred boundaries, and this is a very serious vulnerability.
I can completely see how that happens. If your whole purpose is holding people together, where do you draw the line?
They often can't, because their primary drive is to make others feel cherished. And because they have such a huge capacity for absorption, they often overlook their own limits. The report uses the phrase boundless accommodation.
Boundless. That sounds dangerous.
It's a huge trap. They don't want to disappoint anyone, so they just keep absorbing. Oh, I can handle this extra project. I can handle my partner's bad mood today. I can handle my friend's crisis.
And the consequences.
The emotional pressure accumulates internally.
So on the outside, they look like the calm, stable rock. But inside?
Inside, the pressure is critical. The care they give others transforms into a heavy self-burden. They literally struggle to define where they end and the other person begins because they lack clear boundary awareness. This is compassion fatigue in its absolute purest form.
That is a really tough realization. If you are an ASSU listening to this right now, that's probably the biggest takeaway. You have a tank, and that tank can get full.
Exactly.
But if they can manage those boundaries, their value to the people around them is immense. In social relationships, the report calls them the adhesive repair.
I really love that metaphor. They are the natural lubricant of interpersonal spaces.
Natural lubricant. I mean, it sounds a bit clinical, but think about an engine without oil.
Yeah.
It just grinds itself to dust.
Precisely. Think about a dinner party or a team meeting. Someone makes an awkward comment, maybe a political joke that completely bombs. The tension spikes.
And everyone freezes.
Right. But the ASU is the master of recalibrating that temperature. They don't necessarily call it out and make a big scene. They might just shift the energy. A gentle laugh, a quick redirect, a look that says, it's okay. They smooth the edges so the group doesn't fracture.
So people feel gently held by them.
Yes, and because people feel held, they become loyal. The ASSU motivates long-term connection not by demanding it or paying for it, but by being the safest harbor in the storm.
Let's pivot to the workplace, because I think there is a huge misconception that emotional support is just a soft skill that doesn't really impact the P&L statement.
Yeah.
But this report argues that the ASSU has massive business value.
Huge value, but you have to know how to look for it. The core advantage is relationship maintenance and emotional reception.
How do you put a dollar sign on emotional reception?
You calculate friction loss.
Friction loss. Unpack that for me.
Okay, so in physics, friction is the enemy of efficiency. If your gears are grinding, you lose energy to heat and noise instead of actual forward movement. The exact same thing happens in companies. Conflict, anxiety, misunderstanding, mistrust. That is corporate friction.
So when a team is infighting, they aren't working.
Correct. The ASU reduces that friction loss within teams. They catch the misunderstanding before it becomes a lawsuit. They soothe the burnt-out employee before they quit and take all their institutional knowledge to a competitor.
So the team actually moves faster because they aren't fighting the air.
Precisely. And beyond just the numbers, the ASU can hear the real needs behind cold metrics. If sales numbers drop, a bad manager just yells, work harder.
Right.
But the ASSU looks at the team and sees, oh, they are terrified of the new software, or they don't trust the new VP. They ease that root anxiety to ensure cooperation continues. In any environment requiring sustained companionship, which is honestly most of them, their adhesive power is irreplaceable.
So if I'm a hiring manager, or maybe I'm an ASSU, looking for a career path that actually fits my energy architecture, where do I look? The report lists some recommended professional fields, right?
It does, and they are all roles where long-term trust is the primary currency. First is client management, specifically high net worth client maintenance.
That makes total sense. If I'm trusting you with millions of dollars, I need to feel like you truly get me.
Exactly. You need someone who remembers your kids' names, sure, but who also senses when you are nervous about the market before you even say a word. It's about that emotional anticipation.
What else is on the list?
Educational guidance. And this isn't just lecturing at a whiteboard. This is deep emotional mentoring and growth support for students.
I can definitely see that.
Yeah.
And in the corporate world.
Team support, specifically human resources. But I want to be really specific here, not the compliance and paperwork side of HR.
Right, not the red tape.
No. We're talking about the HR business partner, the HRDP, or the team culture builder, the person who is actually responsible for the human element of the business strategy.
And finally,
community care. Managing high-stickiness communities, nonprofit support, religious organizations, places where emotional buy-in is literally the only thing keeping the organization alive.
these all seem like roles for marathon runners, not sprinters.
That is the key right there. The ASU is a marathon runner of relationships. If you put them in a high-turnover, churn-and-burn sales job, they will burn out in a month. They need long-term connection to thrive.
We've covered a lot of ground here today, from the IP, IQ, and EQ layers all the way to the concept of friction loss. If we had to boil this all down for the listener, the real so what of the deep dive what is the core summary.
The report gives us a really beautiful conclusion. It says the ASU is the quiet force that keeps systems in motion by carrying human hearts.
Carrying human hearts. That is incredibly poetic. It really elevates the role from just being a nice person to being a systemic necessity.
It does, and there is a golden sentence at the end of the report that really sums up their entire value proposition.
Let's hear it.
When a relationship reconnects and someone feels cherished, that is precisely when the compassionate connector's value is validated.
Wow. That really hits home. It's not about getting the applause. It's about the reconnection itself. It's about that silence after the storm has passed.
It really is. It's about making the world safe enough for other people to live in.
Well, I think that gives us all something to chew on. If you're listening right now and you realized, wait, that's me, I'm the sponge,
Yeah.
then hopefully this gives you permission to set some clear boundaries.
Please do. You have to empty the tank every once in a while.
And if you're listening and you realize, oh, that's my colleague or that's my spouse, maybe go buy them a coffee today.
They're definitely carrying more than you know.
Before we sign off, I want to remind everyone that today's deep dive was based on the Max Energy ME80 Personality Assessment Report. It is a truly fascinating system if you want to get beyond just the behavioral surface.
Absolutely. If you want to dig deeper into your own energy architecture, you can check out their official website at www.maxenergylife.com.
Or if you're scrolling social media, you can search for Max Energy or Ment Energy on Facebook. There is a lot more depth in the charts and matrices than we could ever cover in 20 minutes.
It's definitely worth a look to understand the blueprints of yourself and the people around you.
Thank you so much for breaking this down with me today. It's been a huge eye-opener.
My pleasure entirely.
See you all on the next deep dive.